company dedicated to enhancing leaders' ability to harness and optimize trust as a strategic business asset.
Did you know that only individual humans have the capacity to trust?
Only individual humans. So I guess that process of elimination, then that means organizations don't have the ability to trust. Dogs, animals don't have the ability to trust. Only individual human beings have the ability to trust or the capacity. Is that right?
That's my claim.
Yeah. That's your claim.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, in terms of our definition of trust, we're saying that an individual human has to willfully choose, right, to make themselves vulnerable to another entity. And so there's the trustor and the trustee. And so we're saying that each of those individuals, and only individuals, not organizations, not teams, they have to be willing to be vulnerable and trust. Is that what we're saying about only individuals have the capacity to trust?
Yeah, I think when you go from individual to team or any organizational higher level, it gets more complex because there's individual humans involved in the process. And so you can delegate authority within an organization to do something, to trust, or to, you can place your trust in a leader or someone in a particular role or position to then make choices on your behalf or on all employees' behalf or a certain subset of employees' behalf. But it's really only individual humans who are having a psychological state and processing. We don't have a hive mind. We don't have all of us together, tied together. Our brains are not tied together as far as I know. And so we're all individuals in that way. We're on our own with our trust choices in our minds. We only have the ability to make ourselves willfully vulnerable. We can make other people vulnerable, but that they may not want to be vulnerable. That may not be their choice. That's our choice to make them vulnerable. And that's what leaders really should be thinking about. How am I rendering vulnerable my employees? How are they trusting me? Are they placing their trust in me? Am I the trustee? Am I a worthy trustee as a leader for my employees who are the truster in that relationship?
Yeah. Well, I've always said that, being a leader is a lot of responsibility, because as you think about the impact that you could have and how things are perceived, that equates to trust or no trust. I also think in this case, when we talk about only individuals have the ability to trust or the capacity, it's an accountability side on, if we think about organizational structure, individuals at a level can't say, I don't trust the organization, because it's not the organization that they're trusting. It's really individuals that are leading that organization and making decisions and owning their actions. So there's a level of accountability at all levels in the organization to figure out, why do I trust or not trust?
Yeah, well, you're thinking about trust, and then how much trust is the trustee worthy of in this situation? Meaning, how much should I make myself vulnerable to them? And that it's a process that you're working through, and you're making multiple decisions in a day for different people in your organization. So as an employee looks at their leaders, they're making individual decisions about each leader, but also as maybe there's a board of directors. And so that's an aggregate of sorts of leaders that have been delegated authority. And you can think about groups of people in your mind when you're trusting. So an individual can trust an organization versus an individual leader like the CEO. The question is, what's in their mind when you're thinking about the organization? How much of it is the organization, like the branding, versus the leaders themselves, the individuals. So that's more social, relational trust when you have the leader themselves in your mind.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. And as you think about, in our world now that we live in, where much of our work, at least in the corporate world, is dispersed. People aren't together as much. And so that level of trust and how we're assessing the trust of certain individuals. When you're working with someone pretty closely and consistently, you know if you trust them or you don't, or why you may, or how far you want to optimize your trust. When we're from afar, it seems as though it's a little more challenging for people to really put their finger on or decide, do I trust this individual? Do I trust this organization? But yet, because work happens so interdependently, we've known and we've identified that trust has become the difference in terms of being able to produce more effective solutions, products, services, etc. So how do we grapple with that a little bit in terms of recognizing that our trust from afar is more difficult, and yet it's at a time when it's even more important than ever.
Yeah. So as an employee, you may be several positions removed from the leader, and so you're thinking about them, but you're not in a direct reporting relationship with them. And so the question is this a two-way street? Is this mutual trust? Are we both trustee and trustor in this relationship? That's how it is between you and your boss, or you and your direct subordinates, or you and your peers on your team. It's a direct human individual relationship, and it goes both directions. But it gets more complex when you're thinking about you versus the organization, or you versus a subset of that organization, or you versus the leader, when you're not actually in direct communication very often or direct relationship with each other. It's more complex. And so that's a different level of trust processing that we need to understand better. But if it's going in both directions, then we should also be looking at this from the leader's perspective as the trustor trusting their employees down the ranks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds like a hot topic to peel apart a little bit because the recognition that we're constantly assessing that level of trust and from afar or on a daily basis. But we can give our listeners some help in terms of what to look for and how we're identifying what that trust looks like. Again, comes back to a little bit of support that we can provide in terms of emotional intelligence, and it starts with knowing self, and then how I'm projecting that onto others. And trust is no different. So if we can help you, the listeners out there, if we can help you to peel this back and understand that a little more at a deeper level, reach out, let us know. What are your questions? And we look forward to hearing from you.